Hello there, welcome back to Zero Production Value Movie Reviews. As always, I'm Hoernke, and today, I'm going to be discussing the 2005 film Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, directed by Mike Newell. So this is the fourth of eventually 8 Harry Potter films, and like its predecessors, it was wildly successful at the time. It was in fact the highest domestic grossing film of 2005. I think of this kind of in the same breath as the third movie, The Prisoner of Azkaban, as it is kind of a transitional story where it has its own standalone story encapsulated by the school year, but also the third film and the fourth film they bridge this gap between the first two films, which are very sort of kiddie, I think, in both tone, in storyline, and the kids themselves are very young. And through these two films, they go through pretty rapid development, and the storylines themselves become darker and progressively more adult. And by the time we get spit out to the next film, I think they are very much young adults indeed, and have left not only their adolescence behind from a developmental standpoint, but also from a storyline standpoint, as you'll see by the end of Goblet of Fire. It also portrays that once we get done with this film, we go from kind of these standalone stories to the more overarching battle of good versus evil. Good being represented by Harry Potter and Hogwarts and everybody of his ilk, and evil being represented by Voldemoort and his followers, known as Death Eaters. So I found this film very fun, very entertaining. I loved the format of it, and I think for that reason it's probably one of my personal favorites. It might not be like empirically the best, but I just like the way it sets up. It's really easy to sit down and get into. So overall, this story revolves around a somewhat rare event, a contest called the Triwizard Tournament. So 2 other schools, institutions are invited to participate in this, and they show up at Hogwarts. Hogwarts is the host school, and each of these 3 institutions gets a champion, hence the Triwizard Tournament. And so we get a lot of fanfare and some cool effects and everything as these academies come and are introduced. And then we are presented with the titular Goblet of Fire, and this thing is supposed to spit out the names of the 3 champions. So there are safeguards in place, and we were actually demonstrated these safeguards, but there are safeguards in place where only supposedly 17-year-olds and above are allowed to compete in this tournament. As such, Harry Potter is not supposed to be eligible, and in fact the Hogwarts champion is Cedric Diggory, played by a pre-Twilight Robert Pattinson, very much less broody than he becomes in the future, shall we say. But in any case, less sparkly too. But in any case, after the 3 champions are spat out of the goblet, there's a fervor, and another champion is spat out. And of course, it is Harry Potter. And nobody knows exactly how this has happened, but the rules are absolute, and Harry must compete. This puts Harry in a very interesting position, and familiar for him, in both this role of kind of adored, but also kind of scorned, as people think he somehow cheated, including Ron, and people seem to think that he gets like favorable treatment, or that, because he's Harry Potter, he's special. So he gets this weird mix of emotions, and through the beginning and middle of movies, he tends to be scorned, and then by the end, he's rallied everybody to his side, and they're all cheering. It seems to be the way it goes. Anyways, like I said, Ron also thinks he cheats, despite Harry telling him he didn't, and this causes some strife for a while, which I don't really like, but I guess it adds a little drama, but it gets in the way of their bromance, and I'm like, I could do without it. The only other major addition that we get here to the cast is in the running theme, we get our 4th Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher in 4 years. This is Professor Alistair MadEye Moody, played by Brendan Gleeson. MadEye because he's got an interesting goggle eye prosthetic that zips all over the place and can see stuff. I don't know. He's a bit of an odd duck. We learned he was an Auror, which is somebody who hunts dark wizards. So obviously this guy has seen some things and done some things. He seems a bit unhinged, possibly an alcoholic, and he takes a pretty keen interest in Harry. So that being said, the tournament setup, I really like it because it gives him 3 tasks to do. So this is a beefy part of the plot. It keeps the plot and the action pretty tight. It keeps it all moving. You know, there's not really too much downtime. So I think it sets up pretty well. Along with that, we get the kids, like I said, they're going through their kind of adolescent development growth. So we get more of kind of the love and emotion angle of the kids tossed in here. So overall, Ron and Hermione are kind of still inching towards the will they or won't they kind of be a romantic thing. And this film, they're very much on the won't they side of that equation still, but they're kind of inching towards it. And then Harry, on the other hand, has found a girl named Cho who he kind of shares looks with, but is too chicken to actually go up and talk to very much. Harry and Ron are very much in that sort of nerd place where girls are very intimidating. They don't like how they are so unapproachable, and it pretty much costs them any dates of consequence for this dance thing that happens. So, but that's all like an interesting thing wrapped up in there. And despite the fact that Harry having this sweet sort of eyes for this Cho girl, we know that it will eventually come to naught as another girl will eventually catch his eye. So we also get some timely knowledge bombs dropped on us. Those plot devices that happen throughout this series, which they need, but they drop these knowledge things where you learn of something just in time for it to become useful for the plot. So for here example, in the Defense Against Dark Arts class, we get Moody teaching about these unforgivable curses, which are 3 curses that are so bad that they earn you a one-way ticket to Azkaban. So those come into play. And then also we learn of port keys early on in this story, which are sort of innocuous items but are travel related, like teleportation devices after a fashion. And that becomes very important to learn of as it plays a crucial role in the climactic scene of this film. Also, I mentioned before, we really start to see the Death Eaters, which are the followers of Voldemoort, and we learn of the Dark Mark, which is a sort of tattoo that they carry, and also it's something that they put in the sky to, I don't know, frighten people and call themselves and whatever. But we learn of that. So we get that insular story of the Triwizard Tournament, but there still is a kind of, on the periphery, an overarching major story of the Harry Voldemort thing, which has kind of been seeded out throughout the earlier films. Like in the first one, I mean, Professor Quirrell was sort of inhabited by a very early version of Voldemort, and then in the second one we get Tom Riddle, who was Voldemort, but still kind of in a non-corporeal form. And then here, Harry's having dreams where he sees Lord Voldemort and sees somebody get killed, but he doesn't really know what to make of them. And then all of a sudden, that dream and the climax of this film, which is also coincides with the end of the Triwizard Tournament, which they sort of brilliantly use, I think, at the end here, all wraps up and puts a good exclamation point on the end of this film as we finally get a big reveal of Lord Voldemort in his ultimate form. We get our first appearance of Ralph Fiennes, the wonderful actor who plays Lord Voldemort, and a great job from the makeup team to give him what his finished product looks like, which is not... It's a human, but a very kind of serpentine-looking human with a malevolent, not exactly right appearance. He definitely looks menacing, and it works very well for what they want the character to do. And we get Harry and Voldemort in their first real confrontation, and then this all sort of ends with Harry declaring in front of everybody Voldemort's return, and that also signifies that going forward, the stakes and the battles are going to become much more real, and the larger battle is starting to take over, whereas these smaller, insular stories are kind of going by the wayside, and a new, more adult, more, that overarching storyline is going to start to take much more of a focus, as now everything is going to be framed through the lens of this ultimate evil character being back and what they're going to do to try to combat that. So overall, I had a great time with this film. I love where it sits right in the middle of Harry Potter. I love the insular nature of the story, but I love that it moves everything forward in sometimes a subtle, but at the end a very blatant way. So overall, I'm going to give Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire a B+. I love you. I appreciate you. Thanks for watching my movie review. I enjoyed making it. Like, subscribe, ring the bell. As always, I am Eric Hoernke. That rhymes with turnkey. And this has been a production of Zero Value. Thanks for watching.